Welcome to Little Bits of TLC, the podcast for educators by educators. And this season, we're doing something a little different. In this Ask Me Anything season, we're going behind the scenes to explore the story of TLC itself. Hosted by Flora Yao, Matthew Hayes, and Cass O'Hara, each episode sits down with TLC founder Heather Bolchko to unpack how it all started, where it's headed, and what she's learned along the way. So whether you're new to TLC or you've been with us from the beginning, this season is all about curiosity, connection, and a journey so full of twists and turns and brilliance, even Heather's still catching up. This is Little Bits of TLC. Looking for something that actually fits your life? TLC University is here for that. Each week, we spotlight something different. A webinar with real-world insights, a hangout-style interview, and a hands-on workshop or a Q&A where we answer your questions. It's flexible, it's self-paced, and most come with CEUs. So whether you're looking to grow, reflect, or just listen in, there's something here for you. And it's all in one place. University.thresholdlearning.org. That's where you'll find show notes, professional blogs, a full catalog of ACE-accredited courses, and downloadable resources. It all just keeps growing. So whether you're walking the dog, commuting, or taking a breather between the daily grind, TLC University meets you where you are. Head to university.thresholdlearning.org and check out what's new this week. See you then.
All right, and we're back for another episode of our summer series, Ask Me Anything. I'm Flora, and I've been here since the beginning, so I know kind of what's been going on around here. And I'm here with Matthew. Matthew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Flora, good to see you. So my name is Matthew. Me and Heather go back a little ways working together at NASA. Also started with TLC a few years back as a coach, working with some of the teachers. And now I get a chance to be one of the founding directors of the nonprofit. So super excited to be here today.
Yes, thank you for joining us. I'm going to start us off with Heather. I'm taking us kind of way back
Mm.
to when you first started the company. What kind of people were you dreaming about having on your team?
I mean, I think I shared in a previous episode, I wasn't planning on having a team. Like, to be completely honest, like, I was just gonna go be helpful wherever people were trying to figure stuff out, and quickly learned that that was not gonna be a one-person gig.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so from there, I wanted people who were not afraid to get in the mix. I didn't want to be known as the outside folks that just came in and, stood along the wall with the clipboards and took data and wrote reports, that we could get in the mess. Like, we could help out with students. We could do co-instruction. We could hold our own in meetings and be, competent in those ways. But to do so in a collaborative manner. So I wanted people that weren't afraid. Like, they would jump in and be, part of whatever was going on. I also wanted people that understood education, even if they themselves weren't like from education or like in the field of education, but that they were open, that they were, going to try to figure out how to fit their expertise, whatever it was that they were bringing to the table,
Hmm.
into the education space, because there are just some quirks about the field that if you are not used to it, it can be very off-putting, or there can be a lot of judgment around it until
Hmm.
you really understand, like, what are those constraints that are just like baked into the field. And some of them are things that we would love to change. But at least at the moment, there's, some parameters that we have to live within. So I wanted folks that could be able to show up and be, themselves and bring what they had to bring, but to
Hmm.
do that in a way that it was really collaborative with the folks that were in the systems trying to make sense of it. And honestly, just to do all of that in that very open-handed, collaborative way, not just with the folks that we were serving, but with each other too.
Hmm.
That across our team, we were able to, cover each other's blind spots and support each other by recognizing that each of us are bringing something different to the team. And that's by design. That we all had something truly like intentional to offer. And part of growing the team has just been everybody sort of figuring out where they fit in. The number of times I've been in a room and people are like, "Oh, you're new here. Like, why are you here?" And they're like, "I'm still trying to figure it out." Like, what's my corner and how does this work? That yeah, I think from the jump, I didn't intend to have a team. I was just like, I'm just going to go be helpful. And then it was just a matter of, okay, well, then who can kind of represent this work really well?
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And I think it's so funny that you talk about and I believe you, and I agree with you in terms of not wanting a team, but I also know a little bit about your story and your history, and like that's never been a thing. Like always been surrounded by people, even like people crashing at your house, and like
Mhm.
it has its own nickname, like a gathering spot. So like it's so funny to hear that, but I think that goes back to some of the stuff we talked about in episode 2, right? Around kind of the driving forces of just who you are as a person.
Mm.
Um, so uh, I you mentioned a whole bunch in that last piece um, around the team, but a lot of the things I heard weren't just competent in their skill sets, weren't just they knew the quirks of the education system. I heard a lot of like more intrinsic pieces too. So
Mhm.
like I'm curious, outside of their certifications, like what are some of those things you look for as you're building your team? Like are there certain qualities or values or kind of how do you really navigate that?
Yeah. So as part of the hiring process that we built here as kind of a way to try to tap into some of those things, um, one of the things that I wanted to make sure was very present in anyone is that they had a decent concept of self, that they could be introspective, they could be reflective, because that was going to be necessary if they're making sense of a new field to them, if they are working with people in ways that they had never worked with before. There it was set up that there was going to be a lot of potential conflict, and I wanted people who would pause and take their own account, uh, just into that mix before kind of reacting or jumping in. And so there was a kind of an unstated expectation that whoever was going to be part of our team was going to be kind of deeply reflective and introspective. And so as part of us growing our team, I've actually created, and that's part of the one of the first interview pieces is a independent introspective reflection that walks through a whole bunch of different things, because what we do and how we do it is unique. It's not your typical workplace scenario, and especially not like if you're not familiar with working in either hybrid or remote teaming, there's just some nuance that comes with it. And so I intentionally designed that because I have had some people thinking that we were maybe a bit more of a traditional workplace, and they started going through the introspective reflection, and there's actually a dump out halfway through it. And I have had people dump out of it. And just say, yeah, thank you. Like, this is super helpful. I'm really glad that I understand that this isn't a fit for me. And so I think that was part of it. But the other thing is that I wanted to make sure that people could figure out how they had something to offer and how they could receive from others as well. And so we actually do a reverse interview where the candidate interviews folks on our team. And we look at what depth of thought is happening in the types of questions that they're asking. And so that was another way of saying, how are they kind of showing up to the table? What types of things are they thinking about? Um, because again, it was kind of that depth of intentionality behind the work, not just we can do the work.
Mhm. Something I've noticed about basically everybody on our team from the beginning to now is the fire, like the passion that they have for what
Mm.
they do. And I don't know if that was intentional of like something you were looking for, but like everybody has it. They're just like rearing to go. They're so excited.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that the folks that tend to be the deepest thinkers, they tend to think much less of themselves than what their resumes or CVs would, say about them, are also the ones who are really like the most deeply convicted about what it is that they're doing, which has then, especially in partnership, when they start seeing each other and understanding how everybody kind of fits together and we're moving kind of toward this common direction, if that's on a project or if that's just like the mission of the organization, they really root in. And it's been, I don't know, very fueling because I know I myself have walked through some rough patches along the way of TLC, and there's always someone who is like, "Hey, thanks for this," or "Hey, that was really cool," or just on like different people kind of bringing that passion and excitement back into the work really helps me even keep my head above water when some of the stuff is getting kind of crazy too. But
Mhm.
yeah, you're right. You're right. There's like a deeply passionate part of it's kind of a through line through most of our folks. I don't think I have intentionally interviewed or screened for that at all. But you're right, that is very true.
I know we get into a whole bunch of different things in this series, but admittedly, this is probably one of my favorites because just, this whole conversation on culture. And that's why I love, even thank you, Flora, for the way that you helped even outline this whole series um, with us being able to touch on so many different topics. But this one of shoulder to shoulder and kind of just the team culture of who we are as TLC, there's just so much depth to it
Mm,
because one of my favorite things about culture is it's not necessarily what we do, it's how we do what we do, right?
absolutely.
And there's been so many dynamics in the evolution of this company, coming from the pandemic, to all types of different shifting things in the country, to hybrid teams, to remote working, to just people having life stuff, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and it's been really cool to be alongside you and kind of watch how you manage the ebbs and flows of business, to see the adaptability and the agility and leadership. So it's been really, really cool. And I'm just kind of curious, now taking a step out objectively back and looking at the last year, or maybe 2 years, of just how things have evolved over time. I'm curious how you would describe the culture of the organization, right? Like, how would you see that? Um, and also, like, have you ever managed teams like this in the past? Is this kind of a whole new, fresh thing kind of on your plate and you're learning as you're going? Or I'm curious kind of how you're taking all that experience from other things that you've done through your story and kind of applying it now.
Yeah, I think I have just always respected that every human has something to offer. And it doesn't really matter what position, what hierarchy, what tenure, what background, what field, like it doesn't really matter. There is something to offer. So I don't think it has ever really been work for me to, like, intentionally make sure that every voice at the table is heard or, like, all of those, managerial strategies and tactics that are talked about in terms of building, team cohesion or openness or all of those things. I don't know that I've ever actually given it much thought, because I just see every person as having something to offer, and likewise, with all of our strengths comes weaknesses too, but that's not a fail point, that's just an opportunity for someone else's strength to step into that, um, and I guess I've always just seen humans, like, in community and, multidisciplinary, intentionally interdisciplinary teams, as just the best of all the worlds. Of course, it goes sideways when we can't work together.
Mhm.
Um, but I come from the belief that no one field has the answer, and that the answer is standing right in the middle of all of the fields all put together. And so for me, when I was looking at, what blind spots did we have and who from what types of backgrounds could fill those things, well, then that was just a natural, to go that interdisciplinary route. Of course, as a special ed teacher, I'm used to sitting at the table with a whole bunch of different specialists. I've lived and worked abroad, and so I've come up against all kinds of different belief sets and ways of looking at the world and ways of interacting. And I think for me, it's just been finding what it is and, like, at the core of whatever that is that, either the person or the situation has to offer, and just honoring that. So I don't know that I have any, like, fancy tricks or strategies or, like, here's my five-step plan to building a beautiful team culture. Like, I
Mm.
think it's just I've always just seen people and wanted to help them find that spot to fit in and really show up, in whatever way it is for them that works, and then to make sure that we can do that in a cohesive way.
Mm.
Yeah, this is so good. I think that that's the perfect answer to the question, right? Of like unintentional intentionality.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much
I
my
don't know if
life.
that makes sense,
That's
right?
yeah.
But like literally two things that stood out to me is one, weakness isn't a fail point. I think that's
Mhm.
such a massive underline, right? And then the second one, everyone has something to offer. And I think when we build organizations with that framework, that it's people centered, right? And that we're not scared to take risk. We're not scared to do what's right. We're not scared to take a challenge on, right? It leads to, I was going to ask you another question, but that you already answered it unintentionally
Oh.
again, right? Which is, because this culture admittedly is different than most organizations, like we've
Mm,
talked about already, right? And we have also some of the lowest turnover that I've seen in a company like this,
yeah.
right? So one of the things I was going to ask you is why do you think people stay? But I think you answered that, right?
Mhm.
It's like because we don't try to make them stay. right? You just build an environment that they want to stay in, right?
That's
You
fair.
build an environment where they see themselves being valued, where they see
Mhm.
they're a contributor, where their unique perspective is listened to. Yeah, I'm curious, managing a team like this with so many moving pieces and just seeing its evolution over the journey. What have you noticed or what have you learned personally? Like, how's your leadership style evolved and changed as your team has evolved and changed?
Yeah, I think, as we've gotten bigger, for sure, it's it's been kind of twofold. One is, we have some people who've been around since the beginning, like Flora, and we've got some people that, I mean, honestly, just joined our team this week.
Mhm.
And so we've got everyone in between, and it has been, I don't know, kind of like healthy reminders that culture is never static. With any shift, if that's just a life shift in people that have been around, or the sociocultural moment that we're in shifting, and then that impacts things, or just someone new enters the team and it is like, "Hey, I'm new here and I'm trying to figure out what this thing is." That culture is really just never static. It's constantly, it's a very real thing, and if it's not maintained, then, you just kinda slip in places that you don't wanna go, and so I have noticed that, in those seasons where I think, "Okay, cool," like, where we've kinda hit our stride, we've got people that are kind of in their sweet spot and they're doing their thing, there's these little things that start to slip. And so it's just a reminder for me, like behavioral drift, right? Like it's just something that we need to be ever present, like ever aware of. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be like constantly part of conversation. And it's not like we're providing correction around these things, but it's just never taking it for granted that it is actually effort to make sure that folks are aligned. And I think for me, I'm definitely a person that's like, okay, it's done, move on.
Mm.
And it's like, "Oh, nope, that's not." Like, this is not something that ever really gets that checkbox. It's kind of like temporary, "Okay, cool," but there's still that maintenance aspect, that needs to happen in it. And I think, one of the things, it might be a bit of a silly example, but we're in the season of, kind of closing out this school year and planning for next school year, and part of that comes down to how we're communicating with each other, how we're organizing things, especially in that primarily remote teaming environment. There's a
Mhm.
lot of online tools that work in some ways and don't work in other ways, and all everybody on the team has to be able to access, understand, and you know participate in these spaces. And what makes sense to me does not always make sense to other people.
Mhm.
And so the number of times that I've been like, "Hey, I built this thing. Please tell me how much this is horrible. Like, tell me how much this is confusing. Does my brain translate to you in any way, shape, or form in the way that I think it is?"
You're not
And
kidding.
I say again.
You're not kidding, yes. I've never ever had someone ask me questions like that. So, how is this not working? How is this not great? Like, what could be better about this? It's quite impressive, I have to admit.
Oh gosh, I ask those questions all the time. Like, I would
Yeah,
much rather figure out what I haven't noticed long before we launch something,
yeah,
rather than launching it and then being like, "Oh, I could have told you that. Oh, I saw that coming."
yeah. Mhm.
So yes, I will absolutely ask, like, "What am I not seeing here? How is this not going to work?" Long before we actually make a decision to run with something. But yeah, I think those interactions have been so informative to me, because it's not just me, it's literally everyone around me. And we are intentionally wildly different from each other. And we have, different aptitudes with technology. Some people are totally cool, no problem. Other people are like, "Oh my gosh, if I could just do everything paper pencil, I would mail you everything if I could." So literally across the board. Yeah, I think, again, but it's like knowing who is where, like who has what skills, and being able to find something that works in the middle of it. Even, I mean, for the sake of the silly tech example, like knowing that this person, I'm just going to need to drop a link to them. Right? Like, they're not going to find it. It's not going to happen. They're going to text me and be like, "Where's this thing?" And I'm going to say, "Here's your link." Right? As opposed
Mhm,
to being like, "Oh my gosh, again, here we go." Right?
mhm.
And that they're not left out. They're absolutely part of it, and that they are offering what they can offer. Um, it's just, I don't know, like, I think it's just, again, it's everybody has something to offer and to not let any of these other things get in the way of that.
Mm,
I think for my leadership, it just makes me more intentional of how I am making sure that folks are actually positioned to be able to show up how they need to show up.
mm,
Yeah, I think that piece you mentioned a little while back of being naturally kind of in this check the box, let's move on space, and
Mm.
then having to learn to kind of grow, I won't say out of it, but like to grow a heightened level of awareness around leading a team and an organization, right? I think it's really easy to check a box when it's just you, right?
Mm.
Then as you start having more dynamics in play, you start learning the value of paying attention to small details. So I'm curious for like the listener right now who's maybe in that transition, right? And maybe they have a team kind of forming up and they're kind of looking at the parallels between their organization and kind of what they're tracking through the AMA series here with us. And they're like, oh snap, I feel seen. Right. Like that's me right now. Like, I'm definitely in that checkbox mentality, but I know that I need to start paying more attention. Like, were there any little things that you did that really helped you there, to start make that mental shift?
I think one of I know a difference, right? When I'm doing the work versus when I'm helping other people do the work, I show up differently.
mhm,
So when I'm the one doing the work, I am expected to be the expert in the room, to bring that expertise, and to kind of have that, this is the right direction type of dynamic, not like directive, but just being able to show up in more of that competence. But when I'm helping other people do the work, it's a completely different dynamic. I think it's very healthy and appropriate to approach it with a ton of humility. I tend to assume that I am not seeing it the way that other people are seeing it, and whatever I think is right is probably partially right because collectively that's going to be what is actually right. And so I just kind of put aside I've done the research. This is the direction we're going. Here's where we're headed, and instead, it's more like, "Okay, so I've done the research. This is where I think we're headed. Can you check me?" And kind of engage in that collaborative process. It's just a different style of leadership. Not to say that I'm not highly collaborative when I'm doing my consultant work as well, but it is different when I'm in the room because I am expected to lead in that capacity versus when I'm in the room because I am facilitating other people to lead in their spaces. There's a lot of similarities, but how I show up as a leader is just different.
mm,
That's so huge. That reminds me of one of the things that my mentor taught me a couple years back. He said, "You have to first know your role and then own your role."
Mm.
And it's important to know kind of what am I called for in this setting, in this scenario, in this space, and then owning that fully, whatever that is, right? And but first, I got to know my role and then own that role, right? So I think that
Yeah.
awareness that I need to be adaptable and not everything is the same is huge. To be able to say, okay, maybe sometimes a checkbox is important, right? When I am the expert and I do need to bring that level of confidence, but other times maybe grace is valuable too, right? And I can hold space for somebody else and help guide them. So really great response there. I love that. And I know that you put so many things in play for your team to really start developing this culture. Like it didn't come out
Mm.
of nowhere, like you said. Like it's not an overnight accidental thing. It's
mhm,
taken intention. It's taken thought process. It's taken like nights of losing sleep and really caring about your people and your team of what do they need. So I know you've put together all kinds of different things from like hybrid socials to in-person retreats to all types of different. So talk to that for a minute, like kind of your thought process around that and putting things together and kind of how you even approach that.
Yeah, I mean, on a week to week basis, we have what we call like the agility test, right? It's just like, how agile are you at the moment? And sometimes it's not at all. And other times it's like, yeah, I'm good. I can take on more if you've got more for me. But it's an honest, open ended ask for how are you? What are you working on? What's coming up? Anything getting in the way? It's also a really good check for me if there's anything that I need to do to make people's lives easier to, so that they can show up in the ways that they need to show up and that they want to show up. But that's just like a week to week genuine open call. And so it's a private response. It only goes, into our core team. But it is for the sole purpose of checking in on every single person who's got any hours or even no hours with us at the moment. And then we started doing quarterly online socials. So at this point, our team is coast to coast across the US. And so meeting up locally, as awesome as that would be, would I don't know that many people could even get into one place at any given time because of how stretched we are across the country. And so we started doing just online socials, and we've done a whole bunch of different things. From random like 30-second check-ins with folks, silly icebreakers, motivational kind of vision casting things of like, what are you dreaming? What if you could do something that would just like fuel you? What would it be? What types of things are you finding yourself drawn to? And then, I mean, we've done some informational things too. Different people have shared different pieces of information of just what they're noticing. The online social is intentionally kind of low key, but also very collaborative. It's not just a sit and get for an hour, 90 minutes, or whatever of like a company update, something that in my opinion could have been a memo, right? Like if we're going to be in the room together, we may as well be in that room together as much as possible. And then, yeah, we were able to launch annual retreats, and folks come in from all over the country. We're located out of Chicagoland area. And so different venues over the years, but it's always been kind of a hybrid approach to how we leverage that time together. There's some that's more business and, kind of checking the boxes on some things that, people need to make sure they have access to technology, that we understand like how we communicate with each other and kind of setting some of those foundational ground rules and accessibility for everybody involved. But then there's also an aspect of teaming, like who are we? Why are we here? What are we actually doing? How do we fit together? And really, walk that out together. And that is just different in the room compared to online. I don't
Mhm.
think I have any persuasions in terms of better or worse or, right or wrong. It's just simply different. How we can team in an online space serves its purpose, and how we can team in a physical place serves its purpose too.
Mhm.
And then it is way easier in person to just go hang out. That is
Mhm.
something that we have not been able to replicate in a virtual space as easily. We've done like co-working sessions where we'll just pop up hours if we know different folks are going to be online and they can just work and have somebody there working with them. But in that kind of like face to face space where you can just simply spend time together and ask those questions that feels kind of awkward when you're at a screen and you're feeling like you should be working and now you're asking like how's life type of questions,
Mhm.
and it just happens so naturally, and so that's one of my favorite parts of the retreat because there is something incredibly powerful about our team in one place. It rarely ever happens.
Mhm.
But every single time somebody is like, Heather, these people are awesome. Like, where are they even coming from? And like, how am I in this room with these people? Right. And so it's just like an incredibly powerful moment that I'm always like, are you coming this year? Can you make it? Not because I'm like, the boss trying to mandate some, corporate
Mhm.
retreat or something, but it is genuinely so that folks can get in the room, and they can actually have that, shoulder to shoulder time that they can really see each other for who they are. And it makes it so much easier to then collaborate remotely. You don't feel as awkward or uncomfortable texting or chatting someone after you've, sat down and just hung out with them for a little bit too. So I don't know if that's, what you're asking or kind of the question you were driving at, but it's no one thing. It's truly just a series of different things, and different approaches have spoken to different people at different times. And we've also changed our approach over the years as well and kind of mixed it up depending on the people and the types of needs that are coming up in any season.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's just creating that time and choosing to hold some intentionality behind the time and
Mhm.
leveraging it to be a much more collaborative time, to end the maximum extent possible.
Mhm. I think that the weekly check-ins that you had started off talking about are a huge thing that is very different compared to a lot of like other places.
Mm.
I know that when people have big life events happening, they can put them in there, and
Mhm.
then we have a couple people that can check in with them and make
Yep.
sure they're doing okay or see if they need any help. And like that definitely is a huge part of our culture of like, hey, we see you. We want to make sure you're doing okay. We want to offer you any assistance. We know you might be a little behind on work. Is there anything we can do to help, or anyone we know who can pick it up, or anything like that? And that's big, and it's different, and it's definitely a very important part of our culture. And I think one of the reasons why Everybody feels so seen by you, by the rest of our team. It's really nice to be struggling with something, and I mean, the people you work with are like, "Hey, just checking in, how you doing?" That's there's something about that that's amazing.
Yeah, that's something that some of our, I guess, maybe more veteran folks, as they're getting to know some of the newer team members. And I'm not in these conversations. I wish I was. But I understand that like most company dynamics are maybe the boss is a little sheltered
Mhm,
from the actual team dynamics. And so our new folks are going to our veteran folks with just like the normal concerns of like, I don't know where this thing is, or I can't remember when this thing is due, or you just like
mhm,
normal trying to do work types of questions. But they're like going to each other because they're like afraid to like say anything to, me, or, if there's someone else who's like quote unquote in charge of that, project or something. And I have loved the stories of our veteran folks coming back to me being like, "Hey, just so you know, so and so's still freaking out because they haven't figured out how we do stuff here." And it's like, no, you can actually reach out. I know, Flora, you and I have brought in some extra help behind the scenes, and you and I were very intentional with how we positioned ourselves so that they would feel like they could actually come to me
mhm,
by, starting to be comfortable with you, and then you kind of modeling for them, "Hey, look, I can ask Heather a question, and it's totally cool. You can ask her too."
mhm.
But yeah, we've just been very intentional about that. And I take it for granted because it's just how I see it. But I know that over the years, I've had lots of people be like, "Hey, Heather, that's not normal." Like, just so you know, like so yes.
That's great. This has been a really, really great conversation. I think it would be really cool to go into depth some more on lots of behind the scene things, but we don't have time for that. So we'll probably have to do that in our next episode. Would you come back and help us with that, Matthew?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. So then we'll have you guys come back and stick around and we'll talk a little bit about behind the scenes at TLC.
Sounds good. See you then.
Hey, before you jump back into your busy life, consider dropping a like and follow at Threshold Learning TLC on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you like our show, share the podcast with your colleagues. A personal recommendation is by far the best way to promote the podcast. Let them know that they can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that they catch their podcast. Just be sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. You can email us at info@thresholdlearning.org. We always enjoy connecting with fellow educators and champions for educational justice. You can find everything you're looking for at thresholdlearning.org. See you there. Attention educators pursuing behavior analysis certification and universities preparing them for success. Supervision with TLC offers 100% remote fieldwork supervision designed specifically for school-based professionals. Educators can earn their hours right in their schools without leaving their classroom, all while being supported by experienced BCBAs who understand the realities of education. With month-to-month scheduling, affordable rates, and both live video and asynchronous chat, our fieldwork supervision model is designed to fit into your life, not the other way around. We also invite universities to enhance their graduate programs in partnership with our team of practicing school-based BCBAs. Our fieldwork supervision model keeps students on track for certification by helping them connect their practice to all exam domains so that they can confidently pass the exam. Explore more at university.thresholdlearning.org/supervision or email supervision@thresholdlearning.org to connect. Supervision with TLC, where educators grow into behavior analysts.